The woke left is taking over schools, they're poisoning the minds of children, and they're destroying basic Enlightenment principles like liberty, justice, and equality. This needs to stop. I'm Candice Malcolm, and this is The Candice Malcolm Show. Hi everyone, thank you so much for tuning in today. Now, we here at The Candice Malcolm Show focus quite a bit on the threat that is posed from the radical left. We believe that the radical left poses a real threat to our civilization, to our society, to our free and liberal order. They reject basic principles like equality of opportunity, liberty, justice. Instead, they opt for their own iterations of these principles. They, instead of justice, which is the rule of law applied equally to everyone, they believe in social justice. So they believe in applying the laws differently to different people to engineer an outcome that they choose. They don't believe in the concept of equality. They believe in the concept of equity, which means that there is more equality for some and less equality for others. And when it comes to the principle of liberty, they basically just don't believe in that. They believe that there should be a heavy-handed government, re-engineering, social engineering, trying to change human nature, trying to change the world that we live in to create some kind of a utopia, some kind of an impossible utopia that we will never reach. And we talk a lot about this because it does pose a threat. We see it in so many iterations so often. And today I want to focus in on this threat, this group of people, this ideology, this poisonous pervasive ideology that has captured schools in Ontario. We see so many examples of it. I saw this over the weekend, and I want to say that I was shocked, but sadly, this kind of thing doesn't even surprise me anymore. It is so pervasive. It is everywhere. It is everywhere, and sadly, it's not surprising anymore, but it's still so disturbing and so off-putting. So our friend Jonathan Kay, who is the editor over at Quillette, he tweeted this out. So on Monday, the Ontario School Teachers Federation District 20 announced that their rules would be changed so that each non-white union member would have his or her vote weighted more than white members. So if you're not white and you're voting, your vote is worth more than white members. So here are the slides that they use to justify the decision to the rank and files. So again, to go back to the concept of Western liberal democracy, Enlightenment values, the idea that was fought for so long and that we at some point finally did achieve is that every individual is equal. Everybody has equal moral weight. Everybody is equal before the law. One person equals one vote. A citizen is a citizen, and there are no distinctions. And so here we have, in a free and fair country like Canada, we finally reached this place where we're all equal. And then what do we have? We have this woke movement that come up and say, well, wait a minute, we're not equal enough. Some people are more equal than others. And so if you're white, your vote does not count the same as if you're not white. It's just so despicable in so many different ways to divide people in Canada up by their race and determine that if they have white skin, somehow they're not valuable as if they don't have white skin. Like how would they even classify who is white? Who would count as someone who's white? Is someone from the Middle East white? Is someone from Latin America white? It's just so icky, and it's so strange, and it's so disturbing that this is happening. And so we see with these slides, with these images, the way that they're using to justify, it's just filled with this sort of Marxist imagery of a revolution and trying to get, celebrate this idea that they're dividing us by race and giving some people more value than other people, all under the guise of social justice and trying to improve representation for some over others. And so, you can go on and on and on and see the justification here. Here is their conclusion that they write: anti-racism is the active process of identifying and eliminating racism by changing systems, organizational structures, policies and practices and attitudes so that power is redistributed and shared equitably. And that is according to the Ontario Anti-Racism Secretariat. Whoever knew that such a position existed? They obviously have too much time on their hands. A couple more interesting tidbits. So some people on the school board obviously didn't feel right about this, and so hence this conversation about reverse racism. Is it reverse racism? No, I would say it's just plain old racism. There's nothing reverse about this. It's just plain old racism, dividing people up by race, saying that some people are inherently more valuable and some people are inherently less valuable based on the color of their skin. That's pretty textbook racism here. But apparently at the meeting, when some teachers sort of challenged this idea of weighted voting, the school said that even the concept of reverse racism, even just saying the words reverse racism, was a form of harassment. It was harmful. So if you have any complaint, if you have any pushback about this, they again just use all of these terms to weaponize against you. If you speak out against this nonsense, they accuse you of harassment. So that's the world that we live in. That's the stranglehold that the woke left have over institutions. And you can just see the way that this woke ideology is being infused into the school district. This is out in the Halton district, by the way. And let me tell you, if I had a child in the Halton school district, if I had a child in public school out there, that child would not be going to school anymore. I think that the only way that we can push back and fight against this nonsense that's being so infused. I mean, look, someone tries to fight back, teachers try to fight back against it, and they get accused of harassment and being and saying harmful things. It's just beyond the pale. I think at this point there's perhaps two ways to get out of this mess. One, elect a whole bunch of conservatives to school boards, elect a whole bunch of conservatives, not even conservatives, just sane-minded people who oppose the woke left, elect them onto school boards, change the culture, change the representation on those elected boards. Or second, pull your kids out of public school. Take them out of public school. Do not consent to the system. Say no. There are enough options out there. There are enough ulterior options out there that you do not have to send your children to these government schools where they will be brainwashed with this ideology. I don't know what else to say at this point. It is just so outrageous. There is no way in hell my children will be going to a public school that pushes this kind of woke ideology. And to help us break this down even further today, I'm delighted to be joined by True North investigative journalist and columnist Sue-Ann Levy. Sue-Ann, thank you so much for joining us.
Oh, you're welcome, Candice.
So I just want to start by talking. I know you've been doing some great reporting on this topic, and we'll get to some of your reports, Sue-Ann, but this Twitter thread from Jonathan Kay, I mean, it's so wild. It's something that you just wouldn't even believe if someone told you about it, or if you heard about it in another country, you would say, this has got to be some kind of a joke. So can you help us understand what is going on in, it's District 20, I think that's Halton, Ontario. What is going on? Are they an outlier, or is this something that sort of exists throughout the school districts?
Well, you can be bound and determined that if it's happening there, it's going to happen or has happened elsewhere. It's a teachers union, a high school teachers union of about 1,400 members. And apparently they've passed this policy that when they take a vote, even if they're not represented in the union, actual caucus of presidents from various locals, if they're not represented by visible minorities, particularly Blacks, then they are required to weight the vote as if they had an equal number of Blacks and whites or visible minorities. So if, say, for example, there were 5 people voting and 4 of them were white and 1 was Black, they weighted as if there was 50-50. It was 50-50. Doesn't matter how the vote turns out. It's just allowing for these ghost diverse voices to vote or to have a say.
It's so wild too that even the concept of just like breaking populations up into Blacks and whites, it's such an uneasy concept in Canada because we're a country of immigrants, right? So it's not like there's like 2 homogenous populations here. It's like, you know, you could have someone who's been in Canada for like 5 generations and they may just happen to, you know, come from African ancestors or have one African ancestor out of 16 versus someone who could be a very new immigrant from Eastern Europe or from Israel or from the Middle East, and they would be considered white. I have a very hard time wrapping my head around this and even trying to understand why they thought it was a good idea, how it got implemented, how it got to the stage where it's actually out there and they're doing it. Are there not any sane people, Sue-Ann, that are on these school boards to stop this kind of stuff? I'm having a really hard time with this story.
There are none left. I'm convinced there are none left, and they all talk within this bubble, and they're not connected to the world. I feel sorry for the kids in the school system, but you know, in some ways, the parents are to blame because they have absconded the responsibility in large part to the school system. You know, I understand people have to, you know, carry 2 or 3 jobs and they're busy, but the kids have become the latchkey kids of the school system. And this is all, you know, been happening behind closed doors. And then all of a sudden people wake up and think, oh my God, what's going on? But this has been percolating for a number of years. Now, the one comment I would have about the OSSTF in Halton is, well, if you aren't adequately represented by various visible minorities, then you do your part to get people to be part of your caucus. Don't do these ridiculous mental and math gymnastics to make it appear like you're really diverse. The other interesting thing is the person who's reporting or being allowed to speak about this is a white woman. Her name is Cindy Gage. She's president of the umbrella local, and she's the only one who's allowed to talk about this. So I guess irony was lost on her that a white woman is declaring the policy and only allowed to speak about the policy.
I mean, it is. You make a good point that if they want more true diversity, they could go out and recruit it. But in my mind, if you were in that situation where there's sort of one person who's a minority, who's black, and 5 people who aren't, I don't think that one black person would feel empowered by the idea that they have as much of a say as all the other people. Like, it doesn't really lend well to like an idea of collaboration. It's like one person has all the power, everyone else is sort of stuck, like, what, trying to convince this one person. It would create an uncomfortable imbalance that's the opposite. And you say the mental gymnastics that they have to jump through. It's like, it's kind of the opposite, because at the end of the day, they don't believe in equality. They don't believe in individual liberty. They believe in their own concepts like equity and social justice, where everything in the system needs to be manipulated. So we get a sort of artificial equity or equality that's not even natural, and that ends up again having the reverse reactions. But you've seen this kind of stuff in other school districts, and you've been reporting on it with True North around Ontario. So let's talk about a few of those reports. Sue-Ann, can you walk us through this Hamilton School Board pushing anti-Black racism agenda for kindergarten kids story?
Well, this was happening during COVID. They put together this policy, and every school board is blaming COVID as they suddenly realized that I guess in their minds, Black students weren't getting a fair shake during COVID. I don't understand why COVID made the difference, but it's a good excuse. So they put together this policy. It's a new series of modules to teach kids as young as kindergarten. And I went through the module extensively about racism, the understanding of racism, race theory, and to talk about anti-Black racism in particular. There's an entire module dedicated. Now, get this, these are 5-year-old kids. So kindergarten to grade 3 would learn this module. It was put in place last year during COVID. And now I tried to get out of them, well, is this required? Do the teachers have to teach it? And I was told that they could edit it in their own way, but as part of the equity, they always used legislative, means as pushing the envelope, like saying that these people are required legislative, these teachers, to teach this under their human rights policies and the policies of the province of Ontario. So I didn't really get an answer, but I think probably teachers have been guilted into teaching this. So they teach anti-Black racism based on this very dangerous critical race theory. And I think we've talked about that. Critical race theory is a theory that came through several decades ago in the States. It's been throughout the States. Parents are finding out in the school system that it is being in fact taught. Critical race theory says that all Blacks are victims of a white-dominated system. They haven't been able to move ahead in life because whites dominate all our institutions. And now, the expression white fragility, now they're upset because Blacks are suddenly becoming empowered. But it's the whole victim mentality. So here we are trying to indoctrinate kids as young as kindergarten in the Hamilton School Board. At grade 3, after grade 3, they learn about Black Lives Matter. They have a whole module on Black Lives Matter, an activist organization that is proven in the States to be violent and anti-Semitic, I might add, and, anti-white.
Well, yeah, like you can sort of teach the basic concept that everybody is equal, everyone matters. Obviously, Black lives matter, white lives matter, everybody matters. But the idea of the political component of it, like you said, that you devolve into looting, rioting, even shooting police officers. It's a really heavy subject to be teaching little kids, and to your point, it creates this idea that some people are permanent victims no matter what they do, no matter how hard they work, no matter how smart they are, how competent and how capable they are, that they're going to be held back because of their skin color. And conversely, it tells some children that no matter how hard they try to be nice and to be good, that they're bad, that they're a bad person, and that they're part of a system it's a horrible thing to be teaching little kids. I can't get over the fact that this is already happening in our country.
It is, and I'm a graduate of the Hamilton public school system, and I didn't do too badly. And back then, okay, I'm going to talk about the dark ages now. Back then, but my public school still exists. I looked it up. We're taught citizenship. We actually got grades in citizenship and respect, all that kind of thing. And why don't they teach kids about respect and citizenship and learning to respect others? But what this does is it divides people between the good guys and the bad guys. And that to me is bordering on obscene, actually, what you do, how you'd indoctrinate kids. So I have a real problem with it, a real problem.
And then why don't you tell us a little bit, Sue-Ann, about what's going on over in Hamilton, because it looks like they have similar program focused on uprooting discrimination. What's going on over in Hamilton?
This was Hamilton, and you want to know about Peel.
Oh, Peel, sorry. What's going on in Peel? Yeah, that's right.
Peel is terrible. It's absolutely. So they had the school board was taken over by the province about a year and a half ago because there were allegations of racism within the board. And this group called Parents of Black Children basically took over the board. And they brought in a provincial supervisor who was working with the equity unit at the province of Ontario to bring in all these crazy, again, critical race theory, Black Lives Matter, anti-racism initiatives. What I did was I looked up the demographics, and as with other school boards like Hamilton, the number of Black students ranges in about less than 6% of the population. In fact, in Peel, there's a large number of the demographic skews towards Muslim students, Asian students, but here they are selecting Black students and selectively focusing on. So what they did recently, it was part of a bunch of initiatives, is they said that teachers could not progress into vice principalships or principalships unless they had equity training in equity and diversity, and were shown to have some experience stopping some oppression incident. I kid you not, they had to provide evidence that they had stopped an oppression incident, identified it, and dealt with it. And that was on the resume, resume that they had to send in. Nothing about leadership potential, nothing about handling different situations like violence in the school system. I've also heard since then that this Peel board is turning a blind eye to some really serious violent incidents if they involve visible minorities and not reporting them to the police, which makes me very, very worried about the future of that system.
Well, and it's really interesting because in your article here, you have some reports from the census in the Peel district, and it's incredibly diverse, and not even diverse in the ways that you would think. So a full 48.8%, so nearly half of all students come from a South Asian background. So they're either from India or Pakistan, I guess. And followed by white students, which is a mix of everybody from all over Europe, people who've been in Canada for a long time, people just come, that's 13%. Almost 10% are Black, almost 6% are Middle Eastern, and about 5% are East Asian. So all of this mindset is really kind of geared towards demonizing one small group of students. I can't imagine that would be comfortable for any of the students to be sitting in a very diverse classroom, divided up based on how they look and their, characteristics that they're born with. They can't do anything about. Like, what a terrible, terrible way to be organizing a classroom. So what can parents do about this? Or what, like, to me, I'm at such a breaking point with this stuff. Like, there is no way I would be sending my kids to a public school that does this kind of stuff. But I fear that it's everywhere, even perhaps in private schools. So, what can we do to just say enough is enough and stop pushing this hatred and start promoting the kinds of values that you talked about, respect, citizenship, unity, liberty, all these kind of like basic principles that we hold dear as Canadians, that these sort of woke leaders just completely reject. And I mean, it's terrible. What do you think people should do?
Well, I think, first of all, there's this organization called Parents of Black Children, who are very activists. They're a real activism organization. And I think what parents have to do of other children, of other minorities, and I understand there's sometimes a language barrier, they have to get more involved. As I said before, I blame sometimes the parents because they've left the school system to take care of their kids, and they're not as involved as they should be. And the more they get involved and the more they form a group of, there's safety in numbers, so to speak, the more they speak out, probably the more that these things will be exposed and come to everyone's attention. The problem is that some of these school board directors drift from school board to school board, spreading their woke theories. Now, the woman who headed up the Peel board, who put all this in motion, is now at the Toronto School Board, wreaking the same havoc. So I think parents have to be a lot more aware about what's going on, stand up for free speech, and don't accept the fact that school boards are saying, you entrust us, this kind of patriarchal thing, you entrust your kids to us, we'll take care of them. No more. And I mean, for those who can't pull them out of the school system, I mean, people have talked about homeschooling, push for charter schools. I mean, I can't believe the Ford government, the Doug Ford government is allowing this to happen. It's just beyond my comprehension that they're allowing this to continue within the school boards, or actually flourish.
Right, and if this is all happening under a conservative watch, you can only imagine how much worse it could get when Liberals come back into power in Ontario, which I'm sure at some point they will. Well, Sue-Ann, thank you so much for your great reporting on this topic, and thank you for keeping us informed, because, if it weren't for your reporting and some of the other reports that are out there, we wouldn't even know this stuff was going on, because it all happens behind closed doors. So we really, really appreciate your reporting on this, Sue-Ann.
Thank you.
All right, thank you so much for tuning in. I'm Candice Malcolm, and this is The Candice Malcolm Show.